It's been a very long time since we've looked at the Super Monkey Ball series, so as a refresher, let me remind you where we were at. Over an entire year ago now, we were in the middle of a series where we were taking a look at some of the obscure games released in the franchise. We've already looked at the weird physical games that you can get your hands on, and we also looked at the different games that ran on Flash and were playable in your internet browser. Now though, this is where things get seriously complicated, because we're finally taking a look at the games that ran on Java. I would imagine that there's quite a few people out there that don't know exactly what Java is, and to be quite honest, I'm no expert on the subject either. But to give a very basic overview, Java is a programming language that was an extremely popular choice for people wanting to create games and apps for mobile devices. While it is still used to this day, mostly in the creation of certain mobile apps, and it is still very relevant. In fact, a little known game called Minecraft was actually written in Java. When I refer to Java games in this video, I'm talking about games which could be found on mobile devices from the pre-smartphone, or maybe more specifically, pre-iPhone age. So, as a broad reference point, we're talking about mobile games released mostly before the year 2008. With all of that out of the way, I think it's time that we get started talking about my specialist subject, which is of course, little cartoon monkeys running around in balls. The first game on today's agenda is 2002's SEGA Monkey Ball, and until very recently, this game was thought to be completely lost. However, after a long and arduous battle, a group of preservationists managed to extract the file for the game from an old mobile device, thus allowing us to play it through emulation. The footage you're watching now was recorded directly from a device that the game was found on, and it's been shared to us by none other than Kardino, another Monkey Ball fanatic and a bit of a tech wizard. And don't you worry, we'll be hearing more from him later. The unfortunate thing is that only the demo version of the game is currently accessible, which is only a few levels long, but at least we can get an impression of what the full game would have been like. This is a pretty faithful recreation of the main mode of Super Monkey Ball, only from a top-down perspective and having far less of an emphasis on crazy physics manipulation and being much more simplified. You use the number pad on the phone to move the ball up, down, left and right, and make it to the goal, collecting as many yellow bananas as possible in order to boost your score. An interesting thing with this is that there's actually black bananas on the stages, which need to be avoided, because bumping into these will make this little icon of AiAi sad, and trust me, you don't want to make AiAi upset. Weirdly, getting these black bananas doesn't seem to have any other effect on the game, but I wouldn't be surprised if this was due to only having the demo version. Maybe in the full game getting one of these would have reduced your score, which is a really interesting concept and nothing like this has ever been seen even in the main series. That is, maybe outside of the Dark Banana mode in Banana Mania, but this isn't exactly the same because in that mode if you touch a banana it's a straight up instant fail, which isn't the case here in SEGA Monkey Ball. So yeah, while this mechanic doesn't do much in the demo version of the game, I still think that this is a neat idea. There's a couple of other interesting ideas here too, with this level which features a sliding box puzzle where you need to bump into blocks to clear a way to the goal without blocking yourself in. And there's even a level which features ice and wind physics too, making the floor slippery and being blasted off of platforms. It's a pretty impressive game all things considered, and it's a shame that we can't see what the full version's like. Considering when this came out though, this would have been a good way of taking Monkey Ball on the go. Next up, we're talking about a game that was released a year later called AiAi's Funhouse, and this is yet another one that was thought to be completely lost to time until very recently. An interesting bit of trivia for you now. As far as I'm aware, this is the only game in the entire series that doesn't have the words monkey or ball in its title. Nice. While 2002's SEGA Monkey Ball took inspiration from the main mode of the console games, AiAi's Funhouse instead attempts to give us an experience more similar to playing the minigames. Rather than recreating existing minigames though, AiAi's Funhouse instead creates completely original ones specifically made for mobile devices. So, found within the depths of AiAi's Funhouse, we have two minigames, the first of which being called Whack-a-Monkey. This is probably self-explanatory, but it's basically just a whack-a-mole game where different pictures appear in the windows of the Funhouse, and you press a button on the phone corresponding to the picture's location on the screen. The objective is to hit as many monkeys and bananas as possible, while also avoiding the black bananas, because this time these will actually reduce your score. There's 3 levels of difficulty to go through, and then at the end it tallies up your score, and you're done. In theory, you could have competed with friends to see who could do the best, and if you wanted to absolutely annihilate the competition, you could have gone for bonus points by clearing a stage without making a mistake or hitting any of the black bananas. In fact, if you're willing to try and get this game working for yourself, why don't you try and see if you can beat my best score? The second and final game in AiAi's Funhouse is Monkey See, Monkey Do. And this is one of those pattern memorization games where AiAi will appear in different locations and you need to remember the pattern and input the sequence correctly, with it then adding a new location onto the chain for each time you get it right. The game ends if you get a sequence wrong, and when you try again it's a brand new randomized pattern. It's obviously a very basic minigame, but it's not all that bad. The main appeal here though is definitely Whack-a-Monkey. I had way more fun with that than Monkey See, Monkey Do. All things considered, AiAi's Funhouse isn't actually completely terrible. It's extremely primitive, don't get me wrong, but it does work, and it would have been easy to kill a bit of time with it. With the UI matching the one seen in SEGA Monkey Ball, I kinda like to think of AiAi's Funhouse as being the minigame companion to that game. And if you do consider them as being a part of the same package, then it's actually quite good. Now we have yet another game released in 2003 with Monkey Ball Mini Golf, and as you can probably expect from the game's title, this is a mobile phone remake of the mini golf game from the original Super Monkey Ball. Just like with Sega Monkey Ball, the perspective of this one is top-down, but it works pretty much exactly like it does in the proper game. You aim the ball, charge up a power meter, and then fling it towards the hole. Classic Monkey Ball mini golf. The unique thing about this though is that you aren't just trying to get par or lower like in normal golf, but instead you're trying to get to the end of the course without running out of strokes. By collecting bananas found on the course, you'll receive another swing at the ball. So sometimes there's these interesting situations where you'll see a load of bananas and you could risk going for them and potentially messing up and wasting a hit, or you could just ignore them and go straight towards the hole but risk running out of hits along the way because you didn't go for the bananas. It's got a nice risk versus reward element to it, and it actually does a good job of separating itself from the version of the minigame found in the console Super Monkey Ball. There's even some interesting level designs here, featuring obstacles like conveyor belts, portals which teleport you around, bumpers, and more. The level theme even changes sometimes too, so it doesn't get visually boring either. And you can even change your character between each stage, and each of the main 4 monkeys all have different stats. I really wasn't expecting much when I booted this up, but this is actually pretty great. Another thing I liked is that when you fail a level by running out of hits, it actually just moves you on to the next level, and the punishment is simply that you don't get any score added onto your total. This could be considered annoying if you really wanted to finish the level you were on, but I think it would have been even more annoying if you got stuck replaying the same level over and over again because of it being too difficult. One little complaint is that for some reason the game kept thinking I was holding a button down when I actually only tapped it, and it kept really messing up my aim. Plus, the game can be a little bit jittery at times too, especially upon finishing a level. But I can't really complain too much about this, because it could very easily just be the result of emulation and not the game itself. Yet again, I actually really liked this one. Maybe I'm just going too easy on these old Java games, but honestly, I think there's a lot to love. Let's see if we can keep the streak of good games going though, because next up we're talking about yet another one of these games released in 2003 with Monkey Ball Bowling. Geez, they were really going all out with the mobile game output this year. As to be expected, just like with Monkey Ball Mini Golf, Monkey Ball Bowling is of course a demake of the bowling minigame from the original Super Monkey Ball. This is actually a pretty great choice for a mobile game because even the console version is fairly simple, but that's kinda where my complaints lie. It's a little bit too simple and it gets boring quite fast. Adding to the dullness is that unlike with Monkey Ball Mini Golf, there's no variety in backgrounds. There are different playable characters, each with their own stats again, and there is actually a challenge mode where the objective is to knock down a specific pattern of pins using a single ball. But overall, there's nothing major here to separate this from the version that's present in the GameCube game, or even in Super Monkey Ball Jr. for the Game Boy Advance. And bear in mind that with that, you get not only the bowling minigame, but also Monkey Golf and Monkey Fight, as well as a recreation of the main game too. Plus, Junior came out a year before this, so putting it into perspective like that kinda makes all of the games we've talked about so far feel maybe a little bit redundant. But what you've got to remember is that the main draw of these games at the time was that you could play them on your phone, a device that you always had with you, regardless of if you were in the mood to play a game or not. Next up, we come to a very interesting game in the series, because hardly anybody seems to even know that this one exists. There's a good reason for that though, with it not only being a Japanese exclusive, but also being locked to a subscription service as well. Unfortunately, what this means is that this game is probably lost forever, with that online subscription service no longer being active. Monkey Ball J-Phone, as it's referred to by fans, was actually the fourth Monkey Ball mobile game released in 2003. But unfortunately, nothing of any real significance exists to show what it was actually like, beyond these few rarely low-resolution screenshots. From these though, it can be determined that this was probably a modified port of either Super Monkey Ball Jr. for the Game Boy Advance, or Super Monkey Ball for the Nokia N-Gage. It's definitely sad that this one is lost, but because it looks so similar to games that we can quite easily access, luckily it's not the biggest loss. Either way though, let's all pour one out for Monkey Ball J-Phone. May it rest in peace. Before we move on to the next chapter of these Java games, I would like to take a second to just talk to you about how I actually managed to get my hands on some of these games that we've talked about. You see, up until recently, Monkey Ball Bowling, AiAi's Funhouse, and SEGA Monkey Ball were all thought to be completely lost. However, due to some hard work done by some fans of the series, some of these games were rediscovered and can now be reasonably easily accessed for anybody to play. This is why the third part of this series took me so long to make, but rather than me explain the situation, why don't I hand you over to Kardino, who can talk you through the process of finding these forgotten monkey relics.
Hey there, I'm Kardino, and I'm part of a monkey ball preservation group we half-jokingly call Team Potassium. Basically, we're trying to save a bunch of lost SMB media because, surprisingly, there's a lot to find. If you look at the series' Wikipedia article, you'll probably notice a lot of these obscure games aren't even mentioned, and a couple of years ago, the fan wiki only listed a few of them. This is because they were barely documented at all, and most SMB fans didn't even know they existed. But that begs the question, why? Why did so few people know about them? Well, put simply, it's because they're lost media. Unlike other obscure games, namely N-Gage, you didn't just pop in a cartridge. Instead, you download most of these games for a limited time before they would sort of self-destruct and you'd have to repurchase them. Not to mention that the phones they ran on are no longer offered, and even the stores you bought the games on are no longer up. Yikes. Needless to say, this was an uphill fight for nearly every single game. But in the spirit of brevity, I'll just be summarizing how we found the ones Pixels already mentioned. It all started in December of 2020, when I was contacted by Goober13MD. During our conversation, it came up that he was working on his own video about these old games, and after peering into this rabbit hole, I couldn't help but jump in with him. Luckily for us, there were a select few games already preserved. This included Monkey Ball Mini Golf, and within a day, we had it running in an emulator. Easy peasy. Looking back, it's funny because we originally thought this project would wrap up within a month or two. Oh, how little we knew. At this point, the games we knew to be lost were Monkey Ball Bowling, SEGA Monkey Ball, and an English version of AiAi's Funhouse. But with these titles being so elusive, there was only one thing to do: go through every J2ME archive we could find to see if they were in a pack of games. I should stress at this point that I would not recommend doing this without safety precautions, because you could very easily end up with a virus on your hands. So with a virtual machine I created, I started going through the archives. To give you an idea of how many games we had to sift through, the biggest archive was about 86 gigabytes, while the biggest game we currently had was about 0.04% of a single gigabyte. That's a lot of games, not to mention a lot of storage needed. All for the chance that one of these games might be what we were looking for. Well, luckily for us, I did find something in that 86 gigabyte one. A supposed collection of 3 Portuguese Monkey Ball J2ME games: Monkey Ball Mini Golf, Monkey Ball Bowling, and AiAi's Funhouse. This was incredible! Another game had been found! I started up my emulator and got an error message. Either the file was corrupted or the emulator was having a problem. But what could we do? We had these games right in front of us with no way to access them. We decided to put the file to the side for now and continue looking. And that's when we discovered the old SEGA mobile website, where they listed a new game, Monkey Ball 3D, or as we'd later refer to it, Monkey Ball J-Phone. Goober had seen this mentioned before, but disregarded it as an error. But nope, there it was with its own official page. Clearly more research had to be done, as it was entirely possible there were more games nobody knew about. Unfortunately though, even before Flash ended support, this website was broken and the images wouldn't load at all. Too bad. Luckily, our dilemma with the Monkey Ball 3-in-1 file didn't last too long. After a couple days of trying our own solutions, Goober and I decided to join a preservation group called Coffee Break on Discord. And sure enough, they were able to help us fix the file, meaning we now had Monkey Bowling in a playable state, even if we couldn't read the menu text. But that was a problem we could solve later, because not only did Coffee Break help us with the file we found, but they started digging up even more information about other SMB games. They found info about the Banana Blitz Flash game, more info on Monkey Ball J-Phone, and a lot more interesting stuff too. That 3-month period was full of discoveries. I even found some screenshots of Monkey Ball J-Phone, which looked very similar to N-Gage. But would you believe me if I said that wasn't all we found during this period? A month or so after we joined Coffee Break, a user posted that he had a phone with a demo of SEGA Monkey Ball on it, even showing some screenshots. This was amazing, as until now the only info we had on this game was a video from 2009. But there was a problem. Accessing this game wouldn't be the easiest task. We would need to sync the phone to a computer using a proprietary cable and some special software. But even among the people who had feature phones, the crowd who bought this type of cable back in the day would be small. Not to mention the people would be selling them 20 years later. And so over the next several months, we spent most of our time just trying to find a seller. This is when we decided that we should make a full group chat, putting all our knowledge together into one place. We found another person named Ivan who happened to be looking for these games too, and with the 3 of us working together, Team Potassium was formed. It's like the dollar store version of the Avengers, if they were only focused on preserving Monkey Ball games. We even got Starfruit, the admin of the Monkey Ball wiki, to join us. Over the next several months, things slowed down a bit. We'd get a new bit of info here and there, but nothing mind-blowing. By the way, it was actually around this time when we contacted Pixel about our project. There was one development that happened during this time period though. I decided that since we had the Portuguese copies of Monkey Ball Bowling and AiAi's Funhouse, I might as well translate them. And lucky for me, someone had made a program that could edit the files the games drew text from. So with Google Translate in one window and the editor in the other, I got to work. It took a bit, but our group soon had fully translated files. It wasn't the biggest thing to happen in this time span, but it was at least notable. But that brings us to August 2021. It's been over half a year at this point, and we're all starting to get tired. We sent a cable to the person who had SEGA Monkey Ball, but there have been several complications. So we had a choice: wait an indefinite amount of time, or get another phone and cable. Ivan decided to do the latter. Keeping in mind that I'm speaking relative to everything else we've done, this was somewhat straightforward. We knew that select models had the demo pre-installed on it, so it was safe to assume that if we could just find another phone of the same model as the other guy, we'd have another demo file. Sure enough, Ivan soon had a second phone with the game on it. After several more months, we finally found a second cable and someone from Coffee Break to help him dump it, and on February 1st, 2022, we finally had it. An actual copy of the SEGA Monkey Ball demo. I don't think I've ever been so excited as when I looked at my phone and saw that notification. It may have been only 5 levels, but that was enough for me. After 15 months of searching, it was time to share results with the world. This was when I actually started my own video chronicling all the lost games. During the process, I messaged a SEGA rep who runs the SMB Twitter account. And it just so happened that he was going through old company archives around the same time. So not only was he able to give me some additional info on these games, but even provided some screenshots. In the end, I think what's so amazing about this project is it shows what happens when a bunch of people come together. Without Goober, I wouldn't have known these games existed at all, and maybe not even found Coffee Break. Without the Coffee Break community, we wouldn't have been able to get Bowling or the SEGA Monkey Ball demo working. And without Ivan, we wouldn't have the SEGA Monkey Ball demo at all. It's amazing to know that there's so many people who are passionate about the series, even within SEGA, who are willing to put in the work to find this old stuff. And yet, our search isn't quite over yet. There's actually a few more games lost to time that we're looking to find. If you're curious, the video on my channel goes over them all, and Pixel will be covering them himself in the future. So here's hoping we find some new info soon. And with that, I think my work here is done. Thanks for having me on, Pixel.
A big thanks has to go out not only to Kardino, but also to everybody else involved with the preservation of these games too. Without all of their hard work, not only would these games have remained completely inaccessible and lost, but also this video would have been nowhere near as comprehensive as it is either. So definitely go and check out Kardino's channel that I've linked in the description below. He does some awesome Nintendo related stuff that you're sure to enjoy. Other than that though, I've also linked to other people involved with the preservation of these games, so definitely go to the description after you've finished this video and give that a look. Now back to the topic at hand. At this point there was actually a massive gap between the releases of these mobile games, with the last one we talked about being released in 2003 and the next one being released a whole 4 years later in 2007, and this is the year we were graced with Super Monkey Ball Tip and Tilt. Because of the huge time jump between releases here, Tip and Tilt looks way better graphically than any of the previous games we've talked about, and I actually really love the sprite work for the monkeys here. It looks and plays like some kind of SNES D-make of Super Monkey Ball, and I'm a pretty big fan. The production value is really good, having background music and sound effects, a main menu which replicates the ones from the main series games, different modes like a challenge mode, time attack mode, and of course, the main game. The objective here is to guide our monkey to the end goal by using these platforms which we rotate by pressing left and right. This is interesting because it retains the idea from the console games of controlling the level rather than the ball itself. But obviously instead of it being a 3D environment, it translates that to a 2D perspective. Hardcore fans of the series might have already noticed that this bears a striking resemblance to the Seesaw Ball minigame which first appeared in Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz, released in 2006, predating Tip and Tilt by a whole year. So this suggests that someone saw that one minigame in Banana Blitz and thought that they could make a full expanded game out of it, and you know what? You can't deny the passion. Not only did they go ahead and make a pretty lengthy game out of Seesaw Ball, but it's actually really quite good as well. It features different playable characters, different level themes, all with different music and backgrounds, and despite being quite a simple idea, there's a hell of a lot of gimmicks introduced here to keep the game fresh and challenging. We have move-in platforms, chained platforms which all move at the same time, fans which blow you in different directions, bumpers which knock you around, and way more. This is a properly fleshed out experience, and it's a massive shame that this is locked to being on old mobile devices. I would have loved for this to have been an unlockable in Banana Mania or something, because this is easily the best of the games we've talked about so far. It even features full-on remixes of some of the classic songs from the GameCube games, and they're pretty great. I mean, just listen to this. I also love how when you run out of lives, you don't need to play the whole set of levels again, but you can just start from the level that you got to. Restarting the whole world would have been really annoying in a mobile game like this, and it can actually take quite a while to get through the game because it gets pretty darn tough. I was having some trouble with certain levels for quite a long time, but luckily the game retains that arcade-like, just one more go mentality that the original games had, so it never really becomes overly frustrating. When you get good at this game and enter a kind of flow state, it can actually feel really smooth, and the way that you actually manipulate the physics of the ball, just like in the main games but from a brand new perspective, is straight up genius. The time attack and challenge modes just boil down to picking either a level or a series of levels and then completing them as fast as possible. But the major difference is that they're playable in turn-based multiplayer, which adds in yet another element from the main games, which is awesome. Considering how great Tip and Tilt is, I'm not surprised that a year later in 2008 we actually got a direct sequel with Super Monkey Ball Tip and Tilt 2. What I am surprised about though is that I actually didn't like this one as much. Tip and Tilt 2 is fundamentally exactly the same as the first game, having you rotate platforms to get the ball to an end goal. But my issue really comes from this one mechanic where you can actually open the ball up and start briefly floating through the air like you could in the Monkey Target minigame. This can actually be used to break certain levels completely, and you can circumvent certain obstacles by just flying to the end. And in the levels where it's actually essential to use this mechanic, it just feels a little bit inconsistent. Like sometimes you'll easily be able to make it over gaps with room to spare, but then other times you'll instantly fall pretty much as soon as you open the ball. Plus, I don't think this new graphical style is anywhere near as good as the one we saw in the first game. Don't get me wrong, it doesn't look bad, but when you're coming straight off of the art style we had in the first Tip and Tilt, it's clear to see that the first one looked way better. The music here is mostly actually original, but some of it is remixed from Banana Blitz, which is cool in its own right, but it doesn't rock my socks off anywhere near as much as the music from the previous game did. The final nail in the coffin for me is that this game didn't seem to run as well as the first one, which I am willing to somewhat overlook because it could just be emulation issues, but it was consistently jittering and the controls felt a lot more slippery and imprecise. The thing is though, is that despite me not liking this game very much when I compare it to the original Tip and Tilt, I can't say that I outright disliked it or think that it's a bad game. It's still a great concept and it's still well executed, and it features even more gimmicks than the first game did. But just in general, I don't like it as much. I feel like maybe it becomes a little bit overly complicated at times, with the whole flying mechanic and the constant stream of new gimmicks being thrown at us. Now it's time to look at the final game of today's video, and I'm sorry to rain on your parade, but this is yet another one that's completely lost to time. Very similarly to Monkey Ball J-Phone, this is yet another one that was not only a Japanese exclusive, but also locked to a subscription service called iMode. Luckily for us though, because this one is significantly newer, there is actually footage of the entire thing being played on YouTube, so I'll put a link to that in the description below for if you're interested in giving it a watch. This mysterious game is referred to simply as Super Monkey Ball Mobile, and it appears to be a modified version of Super Monkey Ball Touch and Roll for the Nintendo DS. Look at how far we've come in our Java adventures, from basic, almost NES-like experiences with Sega Monkey Ball, all the way to now with games on par with DS graphics. It brings a tear to my eye. The person who uploaded this gameplay footage has a Japanese username which translates loosely to person who posts videos provisional. And this isn't very helpful because it basically makes them completely anonymous, so I have no idea who they are or how they managed to get access to this game. They're clearly some kind of game preservationist though, because they go through the effort of clearing every level in what they refer to as the Grand Prix mode, and they even sometimes stop to listen to the music in the background. It's as if they're trying to catalogue everything that the game has to offer. But yeah, I mean, looking at this footage, this looks exactly like Touch and Roll. The graphics, the UI, the sound effects, and even the levels appear to be identical, but modified to work on a single screen. Interestingly, the Grand Prix mode that I mentioned earlier is actually a marathon of levels that you do all in a row. This is similar to the way that the original GameCube games worked, where you selected a difficulty and then played through a whole bunch of levels in different themes. This Grand Prix mode actually wasn't featured in the Nintendo DS version of Touch and Roll, so this mobile version actually has some features that the DS version doesn't have. Whether this makes this the definitive version of the game, I can't say for sure because I can't play it for myself, but it is still interesting. Yet again, I feel like although it is sad that this is unplayable, we kinda got lucky that one of the games that remains lost is one that's incredibly similar to a game that we can access easily. Plus, this time we also have the massive positive that someone out there has recorded so much gameplay for this one. Unlike with Monkey Ball J-Phone, where all we have are a few measly low-resolution pictures. Based on this gameplay, I think it's safe to say that this would have been a really good game, potentially even the best out of all of these Java ones, but unfortunately, due to it being inaccessible, I can't find out for myself firsthand. A new development with some of the games we've talked about in this video and the previous ones in this series is that the official Super Monkey Ball social media channels have actually been posting some previously unseen high quality renders, artwork and assets. Not only for the obscure games in the series, but even the main ones too. Look at this high quality render of Gongon. Doesn't looking at this just make you happy inside? More importantly than that though, we have these two pictures of some high quality assets that were posted for some LCD games that were in development at some point in the past. One of these you might recognise because it was used in the Banana Catch McDonald's toy, which we covered in part 1 of this series. But the other was never actually made, but seems like it would have had AiAi dodging out of the way of bombs rolling towards him. We also have a high quality version of a render used in Super Monkey Disco Ball, a Flash game that we covered in part 2 of this series, and even some screenshots showing different backgrounds for the minigames in AiAi's Funhouse, which we obviously covered in this video. This is odd because I never experienced the backgrounds changing, so either this is an issue with the emulation, or maybe these changing backgrounds were never implemented into the final game. We even have a high resolution shot of the title screen of AiAi's Funhouse, which is awesome. If you haven't already, definitely check out the Super Monkey Ball socials. Not only have they been posting amazing stuff about the lesser known games and the classic titles too, but they've also just been killing it in general, with stuff like the Cooking with AiAi video series, the comics they were posting that were always really cute, the animations used to promote Banana Mania, they've been doing collaborations with Fall Guys, and loads more. Even though they don't have a game that they're actively promoting, they're still really active, which has just been amazing to see. But with that, we've wrapped up part 3 of the obscure Super Monkey Ball games. Originally, this series was only going to be 3 parts long, but because there was so much more to talk about with these Java games than I initially thought, I've had to extend it to 4 parts. So, join me next time for the final part of this series, where we're going to be taking a look at all of the modern mobile games. Once again, a huge thanks has to go out to Kardino for all of his help with this video. Definitely check his channel out in the description below for more Monkey Ball goodness, but then make sure you come back here for when part 4 drops. Until then though, if you enjoyed this video, give it a like, subscribe to see more stuff like this coming soon, and leave a comment down below letting me know what your favourite game from this video was. And until next time, bye!